Hey guys, it's Bang for Buck PC Gamer here, and today I'm going to be looking at the AMD R9 390 Nitro 8GB overclocked card with backplate. Now I got this in a very decent Black Friday sale. I paid £205 in the UK. This card usually retails for around 260 and more, so it's over a £60 saving, which is definitely a steal. Now, the card is pretty big. Comes with the Sapphire Tri-X cooler with the black and silver scheme, and requires two 8-pins to power it. And in my opinion, it's pretty much goes head to head with the GTX 970 from Nvidia, and in most cases it does beat it, especially at 1440p. So this is arguably the best sub £300 card there is for 1440p gaming, and especially at 1080p. So I want to put this through these paces and see what kind of results I can get from this, because I'm very intrigued. I remember starting my whole channel when I got my first AMD R9 290. Back then I chose it over the GTX 780, which was around 450, and R9 290 launched at 330 here in the UK, and it absolutely matched the GTX 780 and in some cases beat it. So to see it pretty much perfected, it's a very interesting prospect to me. So I'm going to give this a go and see how it performs. I've got the AMD R9 390 finally installed, and straight out the box the card runs at 1040 MHz on the core and 1500 MHz on the memory, which is definitely a step up from the old R9 290, which ran at 1250 MHz on the memory, and if I can correctly remember, 950 MHz on the core. So they definitely refined the GPU, especially this version, because it does run considerably cooler. Now AMD have brought out their new Crimson driver suite. It looks really sharp. I really like it. Got a few tabs across, going horizontally across. This one shows you my system specs: Intel i7-5930K, which is currently overclocked to 4.5 GHz, 8 GB of VRAM on board, GDDR5 of course, 32 GB of system memory as well. So it gives you an overall version, look at what you've got in your system. Tells you it's Mantle API capable, tells you the version of the OpenCL and your driver version, etc. It gives you a lot of information. It does obviously still have the AMD overdrive overclocking capability, but I prefer to use something far superior like the MSI Afterburner. It does come pre-overclocked, but I will give it a slight boost up to 1125, which is pretty. It's a pretty reserved overclock, nothing major. I'll increase the power limit just to make sure there's no throttling. That's not just because of temps, but sometimes the GPU won't use all the power available. This is why increasing the power limit will avoid that. And I'll give it a slight increase on the voltage. Haven't had too much time to test this. Like I said, I've literally just got around to testing it since buying it, and so far I like the way it sounds. It's pretty much silent. The fans turn off when it's below, I think, 40 to 50 degrees, and goes straight into passive mode. So I'm going to jump into the games now and see how this sub £300 graphics card performs. So the in-game settings I'm using for Crysis 3 is a resolution of 1920 by 1080, anti-aliasing at 2 times using multi-sample anti-aliasing, texture resolutions at very high, and system specs at very high. Looking at the advanced graphics tab, as you can see, everything's pretty much maxed out. 16 times anisotropic filtering, motion blur again disabled, and lens flares enabled. Have to remember, Crysis 3 is still one of the most demanding games out there, so it should be interesting to see how this performs.
Gunslinger 2-1, actual. Enemy ICOM chatter indicates they're still in the area.
Those electric arrowheads you got can light up a large area. Try them out in the lake.
Insurgent activity reported.
Enough, Prophet. Cell reinforcements en route.
He's there! Look!
Sector is now in.
Okay, so I've got The Witcher 3 running now. The settings I used were a resolution of 1920 by 1080. NVIDIA Hairworks is disabled, as well as its anti-aliasing level. Preset is set to low. Unfortunately, this is something you can't completely disable, but it won't be used in the GameWorks anyway, so it should be fine. All the other settings are at ultra. When it goes to post-processing, motion blur I always disable. Anti-aliasing is on. Bloom, sharpening I leave at low, as I feel it looks better. It's just a filter, so it doesn't really affect performance. Ambient occlusion, I opted not to use HBAO Plus, as that's also an NVIDIA GameWorks technology. I use SSAO, and all the rest of the settings are enabled. So those are pretty much the settings I use for The Witcher 3 at 1080p. And we can see how the game performs.
Scram before I lose my looking to make some calls. Watch your step.
Pious, all about salty.
Best deal around. One for the price of two. Now they've got their new king, perhaps the Skelligers will calm down. Novigrad is a state of mind. Understand?
Oh!
Just look at the freak.
Sick of it all.
Moving on to Fallout 4 now. In-game settings I used were 1920 by 1080, TAA as the anti-aliasing method, 16 times anisotropic filtering, and all other settings are at the highest quality apart from God Rays, as that is a performance hog. All distance fadings ultra and maxed out, so really high quality settings. That pretty much sums up my performance review and first look of the AMD R9 390 Nitro 8GB overclocked with backplate. Now for the price, obviously I got a good Black Friday deal of £205, which isn't going to be accessible to everyone, but the card usually does retail between £260 and £270. It's still a sub £300 card and gives extraordinary performance for that price point, really geared to go head to head with the GTX 970. My thoughts on the card, from a gaming point of view, if you're a 1080p gamer, then this is definitely a card for you. It will run pretty much every game at ultra settings. You may have to reduce some anti-aliasing levels depending on the game, but there is no game you're not going to be able to max out at ultra settings at 1080p. Also, the card is ridiculously quiet. I can honestly say I didn't even hear it over my normal system fans, and I never saw temperatures breach 60 degrees. The highest I think I saw was 67, 68, and that's just incredible. If you can remember when the original AMD R9 290 launched, hardly anything could keep that thing under 70 degrees. This does it overclocked with ease, and it basically gives you the performance of an R9 290X. So I'm very happy with it. I think it's definitely a new bang for buck card.